Welcome to this special edition of the FWP's Battle of the Bipolar Express. In this episode, the making of the FWP Tag Team Trash Talking Championship title belts. Part 1. A few months ago, and I guess a whole season ago, back in June, I started an art project. And it was the most difficult and frustrating art project I have ever taken on. Wanted to give up several times, but did not. It started out with an idea, and the idea was to build a tag team belt. One single belt to represent the FWP World Trash Talking Tag Team Champions. And that belt would separate into two, each member of the tag team champions carrying one half of the belt. So I got up and I talked to my tag team partner, the Dominator, on the phone, and we decided on the shape of a guitar. And the shape of the guitar was because Wayne loves music, plays guitar, big part of his life. Me, I'm a big wrestling fan, and there's a long tradition in wrestling of breaking guitars over guys' heads. So the idea of a tag team belt that contained a guitar that you could break over somebody's head, man, I love that idea. So I went ahead and I made myself a shape, and it looked really good, and it was so cool, I decided, you know what, I'm going to try and make two belts. And this is where I went wrong, and I got greedy. I should have stuck with one belt, because that would have been easy. But two belts became way too much for me. So, I'm a pretty determined fellow. And if it's difficult and I want to do it, I will do it. I don't care how difficult it is. So I continued on and decided to make two guitar-shaped tag team championship title belts. And the idea was to make them interchangeable. So they would have different color schemes, but be able to switch back and forth. Unfortunately, that was a little bit too much of a concept, and I couldn't quite do it on my first try. But man, I learned a lot about epoxy, and I learned a lot about building these belts and making shapes and just playing the whole thing. And now I'm going to share it with you. Because the other thing I decided was to record it all. So I recorded everything I did, well, almost everything. There were some things that were very difficult and too time-consuming to actually record. Doesn't matter how fast you go through, a lot of it's just me scratching my head and my chin and going, well, I don't know what to do, and then getting frustrated and giving up for a week. And then coming back to it, because I always came back to it because I'm determined and I wanted to do it, and I did it. And here it is. The FWP World Trash Talking Tag Team Championship title belts. And yeah, there they are. Isn't that excellent? And yeah, it's a tag team belt. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Turned out pretty cool. Not exactly as I imagined it, but pretty cool. And it does break in half. Check this out. Ha ha ha! There you go. The world's first separatable, recombinable, trash-talking tag team championship title belts. There's two of them. There's one, and there's the Dominator's up there on the wall. He's going to have to come claim it, because I'm holding on to it. Anyways, there it is. You can get a good look at it. Isn't that beautiful? Had a lot of fun making it. Had a lot of frustrations. Took me a long time. But hey, I got really good at it. And look at these side panels. See if I can get that in the sun. Yeah, it took me a while to decide on these and to get them done. But man, they're really good. They look really clear. Nice and glittery. And there it is. The Bipolar Express. And that is... Oh, yeah, I forgot this. See this? There's a little notch there. Because in professional wrestling, there's a long tradition of bleeding a guy. So I got a little notch on the belt so you can just rub it on the guy's forehead and get a little blood going. And there it is, the FWP World Trash Talking Tag Team Championship titles! I'll see you in that ring. I start by drawing out the guitar shape, transferred that to wood, and cut it out. It was very appealing. I liked it, so I decided to make another. I also decided I would record everything as I went along and see what happens. I guess this is what happens when you record everything. You get a big, long video, and you have to go really, really fast to get it all in. Here I'm sanding it out with the Dremel, sanding all the edges to make it nice and smooth. Now I've got the sandpaper, and I'm doing it by hand just to cut out all the little niches and notches. And oh, look at that. Excellent! Smooth. Here I'm cutting a groove into the edge. I do that 3 more times, and then I go to painting. I'm going to start with a base coat of white, painting one completely white and one side of the second one white. Here I'm using parchment paper and masking tape to draw out the shape of the guitar and the shape that will be the color scheme later on. Look at that. Now I cut out the parchment paper and masking tape to create the stencil, playing it to 1 to create the black and white color scheme, and then applying the other part of the stencil to the other guitar to create the white and black scheme. This is actually kind of ingenious. Paint. There's the white and black, and here's the black and white. Look at that. Same shape, opposing color schemes. Now I'm going to cut them in half so they are interchangeable. It was a good concept, but, you know, after this it didn't really work out very well. But it worked out there really, really neat. Look at that, opposite schemes that go together. Here what I'm doing is I'm drilling out holes to put little magnets in, because the general idea was to have them magnetically hold together. Unfortunately, after I put all those magnets in, I realized that they weren't going to be strong enough. So now I'm tracing a larger magnet pattern, and I went and got a drill press so I could drill bigger holes precisely along the guitar's edge in the middle, and then the magnets would hold them together. Unfortunately, about this point, I realized that they were no longer going to be interchangeable because I am not precise enough about drilling the holes for the magnets, and things didn't exactly line up between the two guitars. Now I'm doing a little bit of touch-up paint because, you know, things get nicked up as you're going along and doing stuff as you're figuring it out. Now we get to the epoxy pours. First, a little personal touch. On the back of each one, a marijuana leaf that I grew myself and pressed in a book. Once again, this is epoxy pouring, so there's a lot of this. You mix A, you mix B, you stir it up, stir, and then you wait a little while, the bubbles come out, and then when the bubbles are out, you start pouring it. Now what I'm doing is I'm applying the epoxy to the middle edge where I have implanted the magnets, and this will hold the magnets in place when I do the final pour over top of the guitar. Just setting them up to let them dry properly. The next thing we're going to need is some straps for the belts. Personally, I like to reuse things, so I got a chair off of Marketplace, and now I'm using the back of it to create straps. This is the chair that I sit outside in, and I'm going to use the back of it to make straps for my belt. There we are. Now what I'm doing is I've got the straps, and I'm going to form a triangle shape at the tip so that I can mechanically screw them into the ends of the belts. Here I am screwing in holes and getting ready to screw on the ends of the strap, and now the strap will be mechanically connected to the guitar shape inside the epoxy pour. In this case, I pour the epoxy into a turkey serving tray that I got from the dollar store. But don't bother with the parchment paper and the colored packing tape. The parchment paper leaves a matte finish on the epoxy, and the colored packing tape loses its color. Now what am I doing? Oh, here I am inserting glass into the groove that I cut into the edge of the guitar shape. This gives the edge the broken glass look.
which is something I enjoy doing in my art. I collect the glass from the beach on Okanagan Lake, and I use it in my art. It's kind of a personal touch that I put into it, and I think it looks pretty neat. What do you think? Here I'm using a little bit of epoxy to secure the glass and put in a little personal touch. An ace of spades for the Dominator and the king of hearts for the Travanator. Here I'm just touching up the center so that the magnets will stick better. And as you can see, this is the concept, to have them break apart and stick together. Look at that. Oh, isn't that cool? There's a lot of busy work like this that goes into it, a lot of sanding and shaping, and there's a whole bunch that I don't show you where I made the mold that I'm about to pour into. It took me a while to figure out how to build a mold that actually split in half, and I did it with packing tape and a turkey serving tray from the dollar store. In total, I'll be pouring 4 levels of epoxy. I'm doing the second level on one and the first level on a second. The other thing I do is I use clear glass to fill in the spaces, because you cannot see it once you pour the epoxy on it. I added overlapping vertical magnets to help hold it together. With the magnets in place and the third layer poured, I start painting the letters that will spell out Trash Talking Tag Team Champions. Once again, I use broken glass from the beach, painting letters on each of the individual little pieces of glass. Even at high speed, this will take a moment. This is a lot of work, you know. But hey, it's art, and I enjoy it, and it keeps me busy, and it keeps my hands busy, and it keeps my mind occupied, and I like it. And it's still going. Here we go, painting, painting, painting. Final touch-ups. There we go. I think we now have all the letters ready to do the 4th pour of the epoxy resin and put everything into place. Oh yeah, okay, here we go now. Now we're getting to the good stuff, the final pour. So what I do is I'm laying down a little base layer so that the glass letters and other glass that I'm going to add will stay into place. And here we go, putting everything in, and you can see I'm spelling out FWP with broken glass. Unfortunately, I did not think that the blue glass would not show up on the black background, but hey, once you start pouring with epoxy, things need to keep progressing, and then you need to be really patient while it dries. Just before it's fully dry and the epoxy is still a little tacky, you lay the rhinestones around the edge, and there you have it, the FWP World Trash Talking Tag Team Championship title belts.
Well, there you have it. Part 1, the making of the FWP World Trash Talking Tag Team Championship title belts. The only belts you can wear like this. So believe it or not, that was the easy part. I mentioned a little bit about the colored packing tape, which leaves the color in the epoxy, and the parchment paper, which leaves a matte finish on the epoxy. So I put it down to make the mold easier to release. But when I tested, the tray actually released the epoxy really nice, and it made a nice smooth finish on the back. So I decided not to go with anything. You know, this is what happens when you're learning. Sometimes you don't even know enough to ask questions. And so, man, I learned a lot when I was doing this, and that's one of the things that I learned, is to properly use a release agent so you can get your epoxy out of the mold. And you'll see how smooth that worked with the side panels in part 2 coming up. And I guess thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun to make these things, and it's a lot of fun to play these this FWP stuff, and to have a belt like this. Woo! Excellent! We'll see you in that ring. Well, there you have it. Part 1 of the making of the FWP World Trash Talking Tag Team Championship title belts. This project has been extremely difficult, and the Dolminator's belt has broken once again. Both belts have broken several times since completion. This is not really a how-to, it's more of a what not to do. But hey, we all learn from our mistakes. Anyway, that's it. Another edition of the FWP's Battle of the Bipolar Express. We'll see you next time for part 2.